Okay, hey everybody, Teching 101 here, and welcome back to BANKAST. Apologies for the delay on this one. I was at a convention over the weekend when the episode dropped, but we're finally getting around to it now. This will be Bleach, the 1,000-Year Blood War Arc, Core 2, Episode 16, The Fundamental Virulence. Yes, this will be covering, we're in Volume 62 right now, if anybody is following along in the manga. This will be chapters 552 to 554, so on the surface, we're only covering 3 chapters here, but they're also starting to move a lot of stuff around, and I think that's honestly because of what they're doing with Ichigo right now in the anime, and so we even get some shots with Ikkaku, Yumachika, and Shuhei setting up their fight with Mask, and we're actually getting a little bit more of that, and that doesn't happen until like chapter 559, okay, so we're really kind of cutting around a little bit here, splicing things together, and we also get an amazing scene with Shinji Hirako in this episode here, but first, we're just focusing on Momo, I guess. I just have Momo pulled up right here. So that's at the beginning of the episode when we just kind of see the other members of the Gotei 13 that we don't really focus on yet, like Isane and Iba and Momo, and they're pretty much just going around the Seirete fighting the Soldat. They're the ones fighting like the foot soldiers. We don't really focus too much on the Soldat, and I think mainly that might be because of what Shinji's going to do with his Bankai, but also it's like, yeah, they're fighting like the lieutenants and the third seats, all the other people around the Seirete. We see Isane very briefly. She's like healing an injured a Soul Reaper outside of the 4th Division barracks, or where the 4th Division used to be. And so the Seirete is just in chaos here. I'm telling you what, Momo was really underutilized in this entire story. Honestly, like from the Soul Society arc all the way up to the Urankar arc and Fake Karakura, and even here, they don't really do anything with Momo. You know what? I want to see Momo take on Yuha. Actually, you know what? I thought that would be great. We should have a scene where one of the Shinigami, not one of the captains, but just one of the other members of the Gotei, are running through, the Vandente. They're running through the Quincy City, trying to find, like, oh man, I gotta find my captain, I gotta find other Soul Reapers, we need to get together and make a plan and do a counterattack, and you're running around and you have no idea where you're going, and then you accidentally stumble upon the Silber, and you accidentally just walk into Yuha's throne room, and then Yuha just looks at you. Like, it doesn't have to be Momo. It could have been Ikkaku versus Yuha. That would have been a cool fight to see. All right, who would not buy tickets to that? Ikkaku looking at Yuha, be like, oh, I accidentally stumbled upon the main boss's throne room. Okay, I'm feeling lucky today. Let's go. And then Ikkaku goes Bankai. Momo would have been great too. The expression on Momo's face after discovering, oh no, this isn't good. It's like, yeah, the author really wanted to use you somehow, Momo. Hadn't really used Momo all throughout this story. Now, Momo, you're fighting the big boss. Here you go. She's like, oh no, I'm okay just being comatose for most of this story. It's all right. I don't need to do that. Oh man, but yeah, Momo. Maybe we'll see some more with her in this in the anime adaptation. We'll see where this goes. Okay. All right. So we're moving back to Toshiro versus Bazby, and this fight's pretty much already over. Have you ever been playing like a video game and you're fighting against a boss that's like you're way over leveled and the boss is under leveled, and you get the boss all the way down into the red and like one more attack will finish him off, and you can honestly just use like a regular attack, not a big deal, but you really want to like drive it in, so you wait for your like gauge to fill up all the way and you're like, I'm gonna use my super limit break overkill attack to murder this boss, even though like I don't need to. It's really more for me than you, That's kind of the impression you get with Bazby here. So he's busting out his Burner Finger 2. And oh yeah, that's gotta hurt. Honestly, the most painful thing from this attack, Burner Finger 2 on Toshiro, is actually not like the giant like slash burn magma thing he gets across his chest, but it's honestly his knee. Look at his right kneecap right there. It just gets grazed and just sliced off and just like melted by Bazby's Burner Finger. That to me is like, oh god, that would be so painful. Also, he's got a major chest wound, and his sword got sliced in half by it as well. So Bazby's Burner burner fingers are actually a very simplistic kind of ability, but it's really cool how Kubo interprets each one. So burner finger 1 is just like a straight like spear, like straight line kind of attack, okay? Where he just like points at you and then a giant pillar of fire, just like an arrow, just shoots right through you, okay? Burner finger 2 is kind of like he rakes his fingers across the air, kind of like a sword swing, and that creates this effect right here against Toshiro. Later on, he's going to use burner finger 3, which just creates like basically a wave of like magma fire, like just emanating off of his fingers, right? And so it just kind of like washes over the battlefield. Then he uses burner finger 4, which creates like a giant sword, like a claymore out of fire, and then he like attacks with that, like it's like a sword arm. And then he uses burner finger 5, which is like this insane like pyroclasm of like, it's like a bunch of fire magma tornadoes just like firing off his hands. It's just insane, okay? So, and that's not even getting into it. Well, I think when he goes into Volt Standing, he uses 4 and 5 in his release form. He uses 1, 2, and 3 without releasing. So there's that. But yeah, no, honestly, like, even if Toshiro had his Bankai against Bazby, their matchup is so uneven, I really don't think Toshiro would have been able to beat him. It's a really lucky thing that Cang shows up and is just like, hey, I'm the one that stole his Bankai, I'm the one that should finish him off. And Bazby's like, grumble, grumble, and then runs away. Because if it was Bazby, even after Toshiro got his Bankai back, I don't think it would have worked. Now, adult Toshiro with his like finalized Bankai that we see at the end of the manga, that's a different story. But Toshiro as he is right now, even with the like holified Bankai, yeah, Bazby's not even really taking this serious yet. We have like 3 burner fingers and a release form he hasn't even shown off yet. So yeah, I think Toshiro was lucky as hell that Cang showed up, honestly, right? So next we cut to various other locations. Here's the former Squad 11 barracks. So we focus a lot more on Ikkaku and Yumachika and Shuhei here, kind of setting up how they all meet. They don't even show up in these chapters. In like chapter 552, 553, I don't think Ikkaku and Yumachika even show up at all. They're setting up the fight with Mask right now. And it also has a scene with Ikkaku receiving one of the hollow pills, which is great that they included that because Ikkaku also has a Bankai. Now, it was not stolen in the first invasion, but the whole point of the hollow pills is to prevent it from being stolen, as well as returning the ones that have already been taken, okay? So does that mean that Ikkaku's gonna bust out Ryumon Hozokimaru in the anime? I really hope he is, because outside of the movies, he only uses it one damn time in the entire freaking manga. He uses it in the movies. I think he uses it in Diamond Dust, maybe Fade to Black, and that's it. You know, and then he doesn't use it against Pao during the Fake Karakura Town arc. There was a whole, you know, that whole chapter called the Knuckle Debate between him and Iba about why he didn't use his Bankai and how, you know, you got to get stronger. Than if you want to be so powerful that you don't have to use your Bankai, you don't want to show people you have a Bankai, you got to get strong enough to fight without it, you know. So Ikkaku using his Bankai, it's always been kind of tentative on his opinion of it. So maybe there's going to be a little story arc with maybe a little bit of character development with Ikkaku in this anime adaptation where he's going to use his Ryumon Hozokimaru and he becomes okay with using it. Also, keep in mind, it was still damaged by Eterad Leones during the Arrancar arc, and Akon even brings it up that he kind of repaired it, but it was like superficially repaired. In fact, that might have been, I don't remember if that was something that was omitted from the anime in Core 1 or not. I feel like that whole conversation with Mayori and Ichigo about his broken Bankai, that was like, they cut a lot of stuff out of that conversation in the anime, I remember. But at any rate, it doesn't matter. He could still go into Bankai, it's just not as powerful as it used to be. But we'll see where it goes. We're setting up a lot of stuff with Ikkaku here, as well as Shuhei and Yumachika. So we'll see where it goes. So going back to the Toshiro fight, Cang arrives, and Bazby's basically like saying, like, hey man, you're gonna get in trouble with His Majesty. You're basically stealing this kill from me. And Cang is like, no, you're the one that stole it from me, because His Majesty ordered that all of the people that took their Bankai should fight their respective captains to remove their hope. That was the whole point. You know, it's pretty obvious just by looking at these two, but you get the impression that Bazby, he's like the rebel of the Stern Ritter, right? He's like the Grim Zhao, as in the Espada, you know what I mean? You could even tell with the hairstyle, right? So Bazby's just kind of like, you know, whatever, I mean, that was the order, but I'm just gonna do my own thing kind of situation. Whereas Cang is like the dutiful, kind of like good student who's like, you know, teacher told us to go and work on these assignments by ourselves, you know, and so that's kind of the impression impression you get from them. And actually, while Basby was fighting against Toshiro, and Toshiro was kind of leading him away, setting those ice traps, Cang showed up and actually sliced Rangiku's throat. So she's taken out of the fight as well. We also get Cang's Stern Ritter letter as well as his power here. Stern Ritter, letter I, the Iron Cang. And oddly enough, we actually do not get his ability in this fight. We see it later when they're being punished, but yeah, his ability is he could basically turn his skin into iron. Or maybe not iron, because iron is like, when you're talking about the powers of like the Shinigami should be able to cut through iron and steel pretty easily, because they're they're spirits. They're like, you know, gods of death, essentially. They should be able to slice through iron. I believe it's more of iron, like, metaphorically. Like, his skin is as hard as iron, as in very, very tough and impervious. So he can kind of make this iron shell around him, which is not very useful in a fight with Toshiro, because he could just freeze your ass, so it doesn't really matter. But he does use this ability later when he's about to be executed by Hashwolf. And then given Hashwolf's ability of the balance, it kind of doesn't work there either. So Kangdu's ability, it wasn't really much of anything interesting. He can turn his skin into iron, he can make it harder, but that's kind of all it is. But he does have the medallion, and he's like, okay, I am going to use Daiger and Hyorimaru in order to finish you off. I'm going to use your Bankai to end you. It's a very poetic kind of end to your life. This must be the first time seeing it from the other side. What a marvelous Bankai you have. Yeah, also, and it's maybe not super apparent right now in this screenshot, but like the Bankais that Quincy's use, and we saw this in Core 1, are a little bit more tinted like purple. So like when Asnote uses Byakuya Senbon Zakura, it actually is more of like purple flower petals, and the ice here is a little bit more purple. It's like a slightly different tone than the tone that when like Toshiro uses it. It just makes sense there. The Bankai that I stole from you. Okay, so now we cut back to Mayori and Urahara's little back and forth. And dude, I love this for a number of reasons. The big reason is I love this is because it really just showcases the kind of pettiness that Mayori will go to. The degree of just absolute, no, I'm not accepting help from Urahara here. I don't care. The entire Seirei can burn to the ground, and every Shinigami in it can die before I accept help from Urahara. That's like a little bit of a vibe there. So Urahara begins to communicate with Mayori through his clothing. He's like, so somehow at some point Urahara managed to plant like a communication device inside of Mayori's armor. Not sure how Urahara managed to do that, but he's Urahara. He could. You don't think Urahara can plant a communication like wire device, you know, inside of light armor from across dimensional planes? You don't know Urahara, ladies and gentlemen. I know Kisuke Urahara. So Urahara begins to communicate with Mayori. We get the title card. And he says, you know, did I just say you can reclaim the Bankai? You know, and Mayori is like, you know, very like, he's like, what? I was working on that too. I could do that too, you know? And so Urahara is in an undisclosed location. We assume he's still in Huecomundo, and he's communicating, and he's like, oh yeah, we figured out, you know, we can prevent them from stealing our Bankai, and also we can reclaim the lost Bankais. You know, that's what I've been working on while I've been in Huecomundo. And then we have random members of the 12th Division that are like, wow, Kisuke Urahara is incredible. He was able to figure that out immediately. Meanwhile, our captain was just building a giant, stupid LED battle suit. You know, Urahara solved the real problem. And I love how there's like this new guy in the 12th Division who's probably not been around for very long. He's just like a new recruit. And he's like, oh yeah, Kisuke Urahara really is amazing, huh? And then the other two are like, shut the hell up. You know, you don't want to be saying that in front of Mayori. He will torture you. He will behead you, keep your head alive for several months before he lets you die. Just for, you know, I've seen it happen before. The last guy that praised Kisuke Urahara, oh yeah, no. He literally split up his body into individual organs, and he's still technically still alive, but just in a state of half death all over the laboratory. You don't want to mess with Mayori here on this subject matter, right? Okay. So, Mayori, I love this. Mayori is like, okay, you figured out how to prevent Bankais from being stolen and to reclaim lost Bankais, which could literally turn the entire tide of this battle. However, that's a whole other matter. You bugged me. You bugged my suit. You stupid hat and clogs piece of shit. You know what? I am done. The conversation's done here. And he just, like, ends the call. He's like, he doesn't want to hear anything else. It's like he's literally not even willing to hear Urahara out. It's just like, nope, you invaded my privacy. We're done here. Click. You know, it's just... Mayori, buddy... Mayori is a horrible person. I just wouldn't let that be known. He is, like, my favorite Bleach character. I think he might be Kubo's, too. But, like, he is a horrible human being. But he has, like, the best fights in this whole story. Some of the most interesting, like, not even really intended to be funny, but just the way that Mayori says things, it comes out as hilarious. His outfits are hilarious. You know what I mean? It's just, he's a horrible person. If there's anybody that actually deserves to be straight up murdered by the Quincy's in the Seirete, it would be 100% Mayori Kurotsuchi. He vivisected like 200 of them. Vivisected, not dissected. Vivisected as in still alive. He was horrible. But man, yeah. Okay, so anyway, it doesn't really matter because Urahara is Urahara and he's always one step ahead. So he just kind of shows up at the 12th Division, just pops in and one of the Senkaimon, just like, hello there, I was actually calling from the Bankai this whole time. Anyway, want to ask you for your cooperation, Captain Kurotsuchi. Thank you so much. Because here's the thing, no matter how petty Mayori can be, Urahara is aware of this. Urahara knows Mayori's number 100%. He knows the kind of guy he is, and he makes contingencies for that. So Urahara is like, okay, I know he's going to hang up on me. I know he's not going to want to listen to what I have. So I'm just going to pop in anyway and just show him. I'm just like, okay, here it is. Here's the solution. Here's the hollow pills. I have them. Okay, great. So Urahara, he plans 1,000 steps ahead. He crosses all of his T's and he dots all of his I's. That's Urahara. That's how he does it. That's how he does his job, all right? And he factors in Mayori's, like, arrogance and narcissism into that. I love that. I love that. Kisuke never change, all right. Okay, and there's even this shot right here where he's like, oh, okay, we need a way to communicate with all of the captains and send all of these hollow pills out, and, Mayori's like, well, unfortunately, I can't help you there, Urahara. You see, the Quincy's completely eliminated our lab. As you can see, we're in a little bit of a sticky wicket at the moment, and so Urahara is just like, oh, yeah, what about that magical light, flood-lighted lab that you specifically designed to prevent being affected by the shadow dimension? Yes, yes, I do have that, don't I? Oh, shit. So once again, Urahara's 100 steps ahead here. Okay, so Akon actually takes charge here, and so these are these little, like, surveillance insects that they have in the Seirete. They're like drones, but creepier and more gooey, and they have more tentacles. So they send them out all over the Seirete to basically hijack the Quincy equipment. So the Quincy's, their equipment is kind of like World War II era with, like, the, like, computers, like giant computers and screens and, like, microphones and stuff like that. Very, like, World War II-esque era, Germany kind of a situation. So they're basically using these insects to, like, hijack all of their equipment so then they can communicate. By the way, can you imagine these two Quincy's right here that are, like, working the telecommunications equipment? Can you imagine the expression on one of these dudes when he gets up to go take a piss and he turns around the corner and he sees this giant insect the size of, like, a go-kart latched on to one of their panels, like... He's like, oh my god! He's like, those guys would just have an immediate heart attack upon seeing that, probably. Okay. Anyway, so that's how Mayori kind of, I would say keeps tabs on everything in the Seirete, but that's basically how Mayori, spies on everybody in the Seirete, is by using these insects. So they're using them to try to hook them all up and to get the communications back up in the 12th Division. It's a little slow going because they've never done this before, but they're just like, hey, keep trying and we'll make it work. Akon's kind of heading that up. So now we have the solution to the holification problem, or I mean the holification to the solution to the Quincy problem, okay? We have, what are these things called again? They actually have a fancy name. I just call them hollow pills. They are Shinyaku. Shinyaku. Okay, so these pills are basically distilled powers of hollows that Urahara took as, like, samples from Huecamundo. So might have taken them from, like, maybe Pesce, Don de Chaka, or Nell, or maybe Grimmjow himself, because Grimmjow was helping them out. So maybe he just took a sample of, like, Grimmjow's Ryatsu or DNA or whatever, and then basically, made these things. Reverse engineer kind of created these things, this form of medication, okay? So they permeate take the soul if you come in contact with them, and they temporarily and slightly cause you to holofy. Now, it's not a permanent thing like the visors. You kind of need the Hogyoku to make that work. But in terms of like very brief, like 1% or 2% holification that only lasts like a couple of seconds, Urahara is able to make something like that. And apparently that's all that matters, because from what we understand about the Quincy's, their opposition to the Hollows is not something that's just an ideological stance. It's not like the Quincy's hate the Hollows for any particular reason. It's because they are their like natural predator. Like that is literally how it works. Like Hollows attacking Quincy's, they have no natural defense to them. They cannot holify. If they even suffer a small hollow attack, that could eventually result in their entire soul being corrupted and then being killed. All right. Now, not always, because we know like Ryuken's mom was attacked by a hollow and she had like a scar on her leg and she was like impure because of that. However, she was still alive. So I think the Quincy's have some techniques to like mitigate the damage if you were like attacked by a hollow. Now, if the damage is severe enough, there's really not much you can do. But the point of the seminar is that hollows are the natural weakness to Quincy's. And Urahara arrives at this conclusion, a couple of different reasons for that. So, first of all, it was Killhei, Sternritter J, using his Sklavre ability, absorbing Ion into himself, and he mentioned how he wasn't really able to fully control the power of Ion, and also it seemed like Killhei really did not want to absorb Ion into himself. It was kind of like a last-ditch effort, and also it like really broke down his bodily form. Okay, so it really kind of gives an idea that like Hollow Ryatsu, Quincy Ryatsu really doesn't mix, okay? And so that was the first indication. And the other indication that Urahara, arrived at this conclusion with was the fact that none of the Quincy's, none of the Sternritter used their abilities to steal an Arrancar's Resurrection. So Resurrection is the parallel, it's the flip side of the coin to the Shinigami Bankai. Remember, the whole point of an Arrancar existing is using the Hogyoku. There are also naturally occurring Arrancars as well, like Stark. Stark was a naturally occurring Arrancar. But they are essentially hollows that have broken down that boundary and become more like Shinigami. Meaning that their Resurrection is very similar to a Bankai, all right? There's differences, sure, but it's the same basic idea. It's them tapping into, like, the Shinigami skill tree and accessing Bankai, okay? Just like the Visors accessing Hollow powers, right? Same kind of deal, okay? Now, despite the fact that the Quincy's are able to steal a Bankai using their medallions, and the Resurrection is very similar to that, and they took over Hueco Mundo, and they were very clearly in utilizing the Arrancars in their army, like E-Burn and everybody like that were in the army, why didn't they steal any Resurrections? And the conclusion was, well, it's either because it's not advantageous for them to do that, or they could not do that. It's one of the others. Now, it clearly cannot be they cannot do that, because Urahara did a bunch of research on this, and he's like, I really cannot see any reason on if they're able to steal a Bankai, I cannot find any logical reason why they would not be able to steal a Resurrection. They should be able to do that. So, since they are able to do it but are choosing not to do it, that means it's disadvantageous to them. It's not a good thing to absorb a Resurrection, and that's where Urahara came to the conclusion, wait a second, the Sklavre absorbing Ion into Killhei, that didn't really work out too well, and also they're not stealing Resurrections. Very clearly, Hollows are their weakness here. I'm going to make these pills, and I'm going to use them to, like, holify a Shinigami very briefly, and then that should poison the Quincy well, as it were, and then therefore we should be able to get our Shinigami, the Shinigami should be able to get their Bankai back, and if they have that little bit of Hollow Ryatsu in them, that should also prevent future theft of Bankai. So at the same time, Mayori and Urahara are kind of discussing this. By the way, I love the fact that they made Mayori's light armor like LED, as in it like changes colors. It's set up like I have like one of those in my house. I have like a nightlight in one of my bathrooms that changes colors, like from red to blue to green, like down the spectrum. So that's really clever that they made Mayori's outfit like actually have texture to it, and you can actually see like the LED, like the diodes on it, but it also like changes color all throughout, but not in like one way. It's like like waves, you know? It's like one of those, like, it's like a lava lamp kind of, or like an LED light, like I said, that kind of like changes color like gradually, not all at once. And it's actually really a cool ability because, you know, he's in this outfit for a good chunk of the arc. He doesn't lose it until he fights Pernida way later in the Soul Palace. So it's cool that it has this ability. Also, a lot of it takes place at night. So I think that's going to be a cool ability, just seeing, like, not really an ability, but a cool feature of the suit. Like, it changes color while he's doing all his crazy stuff, right? So Tente Kura has been established. That's the information network. It's one of the Bakudos. It's Bakudo number 77, I think, Tente Kura, Heavenly Chain Sky Network or something. So not only can you use it to communicate verbally, like you can like, telepathically communicate with other Shinigami, but you can also send like small objects through Tente Kura. It is essentially their transportation network, okay? I don't think you could send big things through it like people, but you could send like little things like those pills very easily. So they have everything kind of set up ready to go, and they begin to send this message around the Soul Society. All the captains are hearing Urahara's voice, like, "Hey, everybody, I'm Urahara. You may remember me from such incidents as the Aizen's invasion." And the entire making of a fake Karakura town, you know? You may also remember me from that time that I, you know, had to be defected from the Seirete because of holification experiments. Whatever, not a big deal. Anyway, so he sends these pills around to everybody that possesses Bankai or someone near them. That's my Maurecchio is getting one right here. Maurecchio has Bankai, ladies and gentlemen. He's going to be the one to kick BG9's ass. But no. So he sends them all around via the Tente Kura network and basically explains, hey, look, you just have to touch them, or even with your sword is going to be good enough. You don't have to actually eat them, although I guess you could if you wanted to. I made them flavored strawberry in case you wanted to eat the pills. So they only resonate, though, with Shinigami that have access to Bankai. So if Maurecchio picked this up right now, it would not permeate into him because he has yet to achieve Bankai, all right? And I believe Urahara didn't make very many of these. He probably made more than necessary just in case they got lost or something, but there's not that many captains overall. There's not that many Shinigami overall that can use Bankai outside of the captain class. So, but yeah, we now have the shot with Toshiro touching the pill, and now the hollow power is permeating to the inner part of his soul, and so now it can begin to, reclaim the Bankai. Okay, now, before we get into that, before we get into the comeback, we have a little bit of an ideological discussion, or a philosophical discussion, I should say, with Mayori here. So he's basically saying that, you know, the hostility that the Quincy's have between the Hollows, it just doesn't make sense to be from ideology. Yes, Hollows are capable of intelligence, but that's not really until you get a little bit higher up. Some of the Hollows are intelligent. They're capable of speech. Like some of the, even like the regular low-level Hollows, like even Shrieker was capable of, you know, rational thought. However, you know, they don't really have much of a society until you get into the higher levels, okay? But it doesn't even matter because it's not about ideology. It's the fact that Quincy's view Hollows as their natural predators. It's a fundamental fear that which endangers your life. So imagine if, like, back in the day when humans were still living in like little, you know, caves and tribes and stuff, like we were in the Stone Age basically, and we weren't really at the top of the food chain yet. Imagine there was like this really dangerous predator that was like stalking the jungles or the savanna at night and would just come out of the darkness and rip apart, you know, a human being, okay? You wouldn't really say you hate that animal on like a fundamental level. You would say that you fear it, right? It's not about hatred of like, oh, I disagree what this animal stands for. You know what I mean? It's like, no, it's like some kind of like cheetah mountain lion looking thing or whatever. You know, you would just have this fundamental fear of this thing because it's like killing you and your tribesmen, okay? Yeah, so that's kind of the situation with Quincy's and the Hollows, and that goes back to what Uryu said, where he was like, I can't go and help Hollows. Like, I literally don't have it in me to go do it. He is being prejudiced, especially in that situation, since like Nell and Pesce and Donda Chaka are clearly allies and they were capable, like they were like not like the normal Hollows that are just brutes that go around and just blindly murder people. But it's more than just Uryu just not feeling like helping the Hollows out just because that's just his personal opinion. It was literally a thing where it's like, yeah, something deep inside of me is telling me to stay away from Hollows because if I get attacked by them, I will literally get corrupted and die. So yeah, that's the idea there. So now we get the counterattack, baby. So we have Toshiro reclaiming half of a wing of Daiger and Hyorimaru. His sword guard also goes back to the 8-pointed star that he has there. It's still broken, but it doesn't really matter too much if the blade of his Zanpakuto is broken. You can kind of just heal that stuff later. Also the fact that he has ice powers, so he can just make an ice sword. So there we go. And then at the same time that's going on, we have BG9 here. He's using various tentacles to kind of like extrapolate information from Soifone, but at the exact same time he's about to pierce Soifone from like, oh god, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. There's like 20 damn tentacles that BG9 is sporting there. Oh dear lord. About to skewer her, okay? But then at the same time, Marechio shows up and grabs Soifone, uses the hollow pill, and then like, Captain, take this. I don't really understand, but apparently this is supposed to help you. This is an interesting scene where BG9 kind of mentions more about his anatomy, and he's like, you know, my auditory sensors immediately drop after a close-range explosion. I cannot hear you. Please speak up. Please give me subtitles. I cannot understand what you are saying now. I am a robot. Beep, beep, boop, beep. By the way, we still don't learn BG9's letter and his power. Well, we know his letter, but we don't know his power in this one. And I'm a little bit worried because we only get one other scene with BG9 after this where he's about to be executed by Hashwolf. So maybe that's actually the same scene where we find out we see Cang using his iron power. So maybe we'll see BG9 using his K power there. The knowledgeable or the knowledge itself. I don't really know how that's going to go, but I'm less interested in BG9's letter, what it is, because it seems kind of obvious. I'm more interested in seeing what Robert Acutron's letter N is. I really have no idea what that power could be. So I'm really interested in seeing where that goes there. People have been saying maybe it's like the nullify or something like that. Maybe he can like nullify powers, but I just have really no idea. Okay. Also, I love the little jab that Soifone has to make at Urahara here. Just like, oh yeah, I'm awake. Who could not be awakened by that unpleasant voice? By the way, I've always wanted to know, because remember the whole agreement that Hachi and Soifone made at the end of the Fake Karakura Town arc, where it's like, hey, if I lend you my Bankai, will you agree to trap Urahara Kisuke in one of your barriers for a month? And Hachigen is just like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And we never got to see how that went down. So I'm always curious of, like, did that actually happen? Like, did Hachigen literally go up to Urahara and be like, hello there, Kisuke. So I kind of made a promise to Soifone that I was going to trap you in a barrier for a month. I wonder if Urahara would have been okay with that. He would have just been like, all right, like, you know what honestly probably happened was Hachi just made the barrier super huge and just covered the entire Urahara shop and the underground training area. So Urahara would have stayed in there, like, anyway. And so he's just like, all right, I guess I'm on house arrest for, like, a month. But, like, who cares, really? So maybe it was something like that. But I love that, you know, you have to get the jab into Urahara there. Okay, so she reactivates her Bankai Jakuho Raikkoben. This one doesn't really change all that much in terms of the design. When Toshiro gets his Daigerin all the way back, part of his like face is covered with like a hollow mask, and it makes sense because, you know, Hyorimaru was partially hollified. I would have loved to see a little bit more of a badass design on Jakuho Raikkoben. Like maybe it gets like a cool skull on the side of it because it's like hollow powers, and she's like hollified Jakuho Raikkoben. Boom! You know, you could have done something really cool with that. You could have added some cool, like, decal on the side of Jakuho Raikkoben on the missile, or maybe the explosion takes the form of, like, a hollow mask or something like that. That would have been really dope. You don't do anything like that, but she gets Jakuho Raikkoben back and begins to blast. Oh, yeah, she has her quip as well. Why don't you take a hit and analyze it for yourself, you robot son of a bitch? Boom! Oh, fires the shot. And the big kaboom. There is an earth-shattering kaboom! Yeah, that's pretty cool. So BG9 gets hit with that point-blank range. Honestly, you think he's kind of an idiot. He probably could have dodged that pretty easily. But you know what? He took the hit. So now we're coming back to Cang, and you know what? I want to mention this because it doesn't make any sense in the damn manga, and it doesn't make any sense here in terms of Cang's, like, I don't know, theological perspective on this or whatever. So he's like, stop talking as if your Bankai has a mind of its own. And then later on, yeah, right here, he says, I don't believe in pantheism. Okay, Kangdu, I understand you've been trapped in a shadow dimension for, like, a long time. Like, time dilates in there. I get it. Okay, maybe you're a little bit off the cuff. Okay. Bankais have a will of their own. Like, he's saying that as if it's like, he's weird here. He's like saying this as just like, I don't believe that Bankais have a will of their own. It's like, they do. That's not even like an opinion. They like scientifically do, and in terms of like the Soul Society. You know, like Zanpakuto are literally a fragment of the Shinigami's own self that kind of goes off and forms its own thing. So they are part of the Shinigami, but they do have their own mind and their own voice and their own opinions of things, okay? It's just kind of like a fragmented version, kind of like a version of like a cloned version of the Soul Reaper, kind of. It's very metaphysical, but they definitely have their own opinions and their own perspective on things, okay? And so Kangdu, like, Yuha should know that. The rest of the, since Yuha should know that because he's like created by the Soul King kind of thing, all of the Stern Ritters should know that. And then he says, I don't believe in pantheism, which, by the way, pantheism doesn't have really, like, the definition of pantheism is you essentially view the universe as God. So, like, the existence of the universe and all of the natural laws that exist in the universe, like physics and quantum physics, you know, gravity, magnetic attractions, and nature itself, like, that in and of itself is God, okay? God is not, like, a personified, like, old dude with a long white beard or something like that. The universe is God. But it doesn't really make any sense in the context here. Honestly, Kangdu is kind of coming off as like a really edgy teenager that's like, I don't believe in God. I am an atheist. I also don't believe that Bankais can communicate, even though they clearly can. You know, and it's like, I don't believe in pantheism. Like, that has nothing to do with this conversation. I don't think it does anyway. I'm really, because pantheism, yeah, it's just, I view the universe as God, so he doesn't believe in pantheism, so he's like, I don't believe the universe is God. I don't believe that nature itself is God. It's like, oh, wait, whoa, okay, wait, is that what he's going about here? Like, because Daiger and Hyorimaru, like, is he viewing, like, it's ice, so it's like a natural kind of aspect of the universe, so is like, or maybe not the ice in particular, but like Bankais in general. Okay, I'm starting to kind of understand this logic, okay? It's not good logic, but I'm starting to kind of understand it, okay? So, Kangdu views, like, Shinigami and their Zanpakuto and their Shikai and Bankais as, like, part of nature, part of the universe. And he's saying that I don't believe in pantheism, so I don't believe that these aspects of nature coalesce into a deity, coalesce into a god being, okay? But even then, that still doesn't make sense, because we're not talking about gods and shit. We're just talking about the fact that the Bankai is a fragment of the Shinigami that has its own will and its own opinions and its own voice and mind on things. This has nothing to do with gods. I know that Shinigami literally translates to death god. It really doesn't make any sense. Like, they've confirmed it. It like, they can speak. They have a mind of their own. And the pantheism thing, I just don't get it. Kangdu, you're really edgy here, man. I don't really know if you know what you believe in or whatever, but okay. And by the way, this is coming from me, like, I am an atheist. Like, actually, I am. But, like, yeah, you're just going around, like, this would be like if I literally met a god, like if I met Zeus one day, like Zeus literally showed up and he's legitimately Zeus and he's 100% fucking Zeus. And he's like, I'm Zeus. And I'm like, I don't believe in gods. That'd be a cool thing to say. Maybe that's why he's saying it. But it wouldn't make any sense is the point. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, all right, well, gods in this universe kind of exist. So, you know, it's an edgy thing to say that's kind of cool. But beyond that, like, derp, you know what I mean? Anyway, okay. Yes. So, whoa, we actually do get the voice of Hyorimaru here. Hyorimaru actually speaks directly to Toshiro, where Toshiro's like, oh, he seems to not understand that, you know, what Bankais really are. He seems not understand who you are, Daiger and Hyorimaru. And Hyorimaru's like, Yes, that seems to be the case. Like he's mocking us, as it were. I don't think it's the same voice as Hyorimaru in the Zanpakuto filler. The Zanpakuto filler, Hyorimaru was like a humanoid form, and this is the ice dragon that's speaking right here. So I don't think they got the same voice actor for that, but maybe. And then boom, we got badass, partially holified Hyorimaru, Daigaran Hyorimaru, and we have Toshiro here. I love the touch on not only covering up his wound on his chest with the ice, but you can even see he covered his kneecap in ice as well from the attack he got injured there. And then also he made his sword back into an ice blade, all right? So this is holified Toshiro. Dude, I really wish the holification was a little bit more permanent. I wish they would have went into these forms more often. It's only a brief little thing, so that's kind of unfortunate. It just looked so badass, you know? And even Toshiro says right here, like, he did mention something about momentarily holifying my Bankai. I was wondering what this giant mask was on my face right now, but it looks cool, so whatever. So at this point, Cang kind of loses his one, I mean, not his only way to fight, but his trump card here. So he's resorting to his original technique. So he has like these Wolverine claw things on his hands. And all of Cang-Du's techniques are named in Chinese, actually. So that's a pretty cool aesthetic there that he's got. And his attack is actually called, it's in the anime, but instead of moving it around, I'll just look into the manga here because I have it right next to me here. Yeah, his attack is Shi Jin Sao, or it just means like snake claw in Chinese. I probably butchered that, by the way. I apologize. But he basically holds out his arms like this, you know, like he's using like Yamamoto's like, you know, double bone, like, you know, Ikotsu or whatever. And he basically fires off like a wave of Ryatsu shaped like a snake. And yeah, Toshiro just kind of like breaks that pretty easily there. He just breaks right through it, freezes him into a giant cross, and he's like, ah, yes, you didn't know. The symbol of Hyorimaru is the 4-starred flower. Sorry, I couldn't make it a pentagram. Oh, with the quips today. Oh, man, gotta play Quiplash with the rest of the Shinigami. Man, Soifone and Toshiro are on point right now with this, honestly. So, Toshiro's like, okay, I got my Bankai back. We're good now. I got this cool hollow mask. I'm gonna go and fight and take care of Rangiku and then go fight Yuha, and like, oh god, and he just collapses. As he collapses, we have a shadowy individual appear next to Toshiro. Ooh, who could it be? So, I guess the implication is this was actually Giselle, because later on, Toshiro and Rangiku are both going to show up as zombies. So I would assume this is Giselle showing up to turn Toshiro into one of her zombies. But we actually see Giselle in one of the next scenes, but I think it is a scene that was actually added in the anime only, so I'm not sure if they messed that up or not, but it's possible she could have just walked over here, used her blood to turn Toshiro and Rangiku into zombies, and then walked back with the rest of the Bambis. It's very likely they could have done that as well. So we get the end card here. We get, the interstitch on the episode. We get the Resurrection card. And now we have all of the Bankais returning to their original owners. So even Bambi and Asnote, who did not fight against their individual, like Bambietta's not fighting against Komamura yet. Byakuya is still in the Soul Palace. He's not even in here right now, which, by the way, is interesting. Does that mean that Urahara was able to send one of the Hollow Pills all the way into the Soul Palace using the Tente Kura? Because that's the only way it makes sense. Byakuya would have had to touch one of the pills in order to access the power of the Hollow in order to get back Senbon Sakura. That's the only way that would have worked. Huh. Interesting that he would have been able to send it all the way up to the Soul Palace. That's the only way. Maybe he has some other method of getting up there, but the Soul Palace is so hard to, like, remove and communicate with. No, I guess it's not. No, because they do communicate with Ichigo via, like, phone. The Soul Palace does kind of call down. So they can communicate with each other. By the way, that's something I should bring up right about now. So, like, getting to this point in the manga, like, right after Cang-Du and everybody was defeated, we have a scene at the end of one of these chapters, at the end of chapter 554, where Urahara receives a call from Ichigo, or the Zero Squad, talking about Ichigo, and Ichigo's like, I'm on my way. They cut all that out of this episode because they're doing something completely different with Ichigo right now. That'll probably be moved way back later. Okay, so we're going to see these shots of Ichigo training, and then after that's done, we're going to get probably that scene later. But yeah, they moved that out of the episode. Okay, so now we get the scene with Shinji. Shinji's Bankai. This has been a long time coming. Unfortunately, it's not a very long scene. I was hoping he was going to use it. Well, okay, here's the thing. There's a reason Shinji did not use his Bankai in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, okay, in the manga. It is not an ability. I understand you want to see the Bankais be used against the Stern Ritters. It is not an ability that can really be used in a one-on-one fight. It's really the best way it can be used is dealing with a large group of enemies at once. So if, I'll tell you what, if Shinji was ever attacked by like 3 or 4 Stern Ritter at once, and then he used his Bankai, and there was no other Shinigami around, then it would be useful. But typically Stern Ritters, they, as we saw with Cang and Basby, they don't really like to work together. Oh, it would have worked against the Bambis, though. Oh, man, that would actually have been an awesome battle. Dude. And you know what? Like, Giselle does some stuff later with Mayori, so maybe exclude Giselle from that. But, like, Candace and Meninas and Latato, and I guess you could throw Zombie Bambietta in there too, they should all fight against Shinji, and then Shinji uses his Bankai on them. There was a fight that Kubo said I really wanted to include. Oh, yeah, he said he wanted to include something with the Bambis as well, right? Okay, because this scene here with him using his Bankai, it's really just an introductory into it. It's a very brief scene. So let's get into it here. So we have a bunch of Soldat after they've just murdered a bunch of Shinigami. There's, I don't even know how many of them, several dozen Soldat are all, ganging up on Shinji right here. Shinji as cool as the other side of the pillow, ladies and gentlemen. He does not give a fuck. Bankai. Whoa. Sakashima, Yokoshima, Happo Fusagari. All right, and then it's just absolute chaos. He's like, he activates his Bankai. It's like, whoa, this is getting trippy, man. Oh God, shock slash! The people just getting hacked up. It's just a brutal massacre scene. Soldat just start murdering each other, like stabbing each other in the necks and stabbing each other, shooting arrows at one another in the heads, and it's, they're just getting completely massacred in the background. Sakashima, Yokoshima, Happo Fusagari. All right, so the ability of his Bankai is it flips all allies into thinking that they are enemies and all enemies into thinking they are allies. Okay, so the only person unaffected by this is Shinji himself. So if he were to use this ability and there were other Shinigami around, the Shinigami would start murdering each other. Okay, that's the whole point. All of the people that you view as an ally, you now view as an enemy. So all of the Soldat just murdered each other in like less than 2 minutes. Okay, like it's really a quick ability. Now, Shinji can still fight too. We actually see one of the Soldat like stumbling over to him, and then Shinji just slices him in half. He just cuts his neck or whatever with his ability. So he can still use his sword, but I think he has to stand on the pedestal. There's like a pedestal that like opens up with Happo Fusagari, and I think he has to remain on that or the ability doesn't work. So he can't really move around too much, but he can still use his blade to slice people, and he's unaffected by the ability itself. So all of the Soldat at once just kind of looked at each other and like, you're the enemy! And they just started murdering each other, right? Okay, now, later on, with a fight with the Bambis, dude, this would actually work really well. I hope this is not the only time we're going to see his Bankai. Like, okay, we saw Shinji's Bankai. That's it. You know, because the rest of because the rest of the Stern Ritter clique, the Bambi crew, they didn't really do much. Like, Candace is defeated off-screen by Byakuya, Meninas is defeated off-screen by Latato, and Latato is defeated off-screen by Yuha. Giselle and Latato, by the way, are both defeated. Like I said, Giselle does some more stuff later with the marching out the zombies stuff. So maybe you can have her still stick around, you know. But when it comes to, like, all of the other, Bambis, you could literally have just Shinji take out Candace, Meninas, and Latato. I think that would all work. Maybe Latato, because she does end up at the Silburn as well later to kind of, like, enact some revenge. But at least Meninas and Candace can be taken out by Shinji's Bankai. Maybe we could see a fight with them. So there it goes. So yeah, Shinji mentions, I can't really use it whenever I want. Also, the shape of Sakanade reverses as well, which I thought is really cool, where the circle on Sakanade was at the base of the hilt. Now it's at the base of the tip of the blade itself, actually becoming the blade itself. It's pretty neat. So, Yeah, that's the reason. That's the reason Shinji didn't use it. He couldn't really use it in the Soul Palace at all because he was with his like he was just other captains and stuff. He couldn't use it there. If he would have used his Bankai when they were fighting Gerard, example, like a Stern Ritter M, then all that would have happened there is Kenpachi and Byakuya and Toshiro would have all just like tried to kill each other, like even more so than usual, right? So that's the reason he didn't use it there. But I really loved his Bankai. We see it in the not the Thousand Year. We see it in Can't For Your Own World. We see it in the light novel. But now it's finally realized here in the anime, and I hope we get one more really serious battle with it. We get actually a lot of Shinji stuff in this episode. It's actually really refreshing. Okay, so now we cut back over to Ikkaku and Yumachika. And yeah, so we actually see a scene here where Ikkaku is receiving the hollow pill, and Yumachika even says, okay, good, now your Bankai cannot be stolen. So you're good now. Okay, so I hope this really implies that later on we're going to get some stuff. And like I said, this isn't like chapter 559. This is like skipping over the whole Bambi fight. Like this happens after that. But it's establishing stuff with Maste Masculine early on, which is good. Okay, I think that's really important because like Rukia and Renji are not here yet. Rukia and Renji are still up in the Soul Palace training. So I think restructuring the way this all plays out, I think it makes a lot of sense. All right, so Shuhei shows up. They're all together, Shuhei, Yumachika, and Ikkaku. And then at the same time, they're beginning to talk about, like, oh, we're hiding in the shadows. You got to be careful and everything like that. The shadows are getting longer at night. That means that maybe the Quincy's are going to be able to have, like, a trump card of their own. Like, they can attack easier or something. We got to be careful. And then, boom, we have Maste Masculine crashing down. And, dude, I love Mask. He's such a fun character. And actually, it's funny because Mask is not even really Stern Ritter-esque. He's actually the manifestation of the power of the superstar. The real Stern Ritter is that chubby little guy down on the right there. That's James ringing the gong. And he's the actual Stern Ritter whose power manifests as superstar Maste Masculine, okay? But he's such a cool guy, and I love the way he's like, come on! Like, he shouts in English. So he's like, a 3-on-1 death cage match? Let's do it, everybody! So yeah, he's I would say, a Mexican luchador wrestler with the mask, but wrestling is also really big in Japan, and they have like a whole masked wrestler thing in Japan as well. So I believe it was in Mexico where the whole masked wrestler thing, like the luchadore came to be, but it was just adapted, and it's very, very popular in Japan. Kind of the same thing like how baseball's huge in Japan, and yeah, it started in the US, okay? So it's just how that goes. But yeah, really fun fight, and I think we're going to be seeing some, because I think in the manga originally it was like Mask starts to fight Ikkaku, Yumachika, and Shuhei, and then we just cut away to them being kind of defeated, and then eventually Kensei and Rose show up, and then eventually Renji and Rukia show up, okay? So we're going to see a little bit more detailed fight here. Trying to defeat a superstar while hiding your power, it's impossible! All right. We're also making this a chain death match. You're in a chain gang. It's just like, yeah, because Shuhei's got he's got the Kazashini and everything like that. Oh, God, this is going to be fun. All right. Bambietta's walking around. She's like, who cares if we lost our Bankais? It's not that big of a deal. We could still fight. We're still stronger than them. Who gives a shit? She turns around because she's trying to talk to her friends, and they all just abandon her. So I love that. Like, Bambi's viewing herself, I think, as like the popular girl that everybody follows, but then she turns around and her friends just left her. So she's not as popular as, like, they don't view her as highly as she views herself. She views herself as the leader of all of them, probably because she's Stern Ritter E, and that's like the highest letter, and then it goes G, and then P, and then T, and then Z for the rest of the Bambis. So she's like, I'm letter E, I'm the highest up, I'm like in the top 5 Stern Ritters, like, cha, like, you should be listening to me, I'm the popular girl, I'm the cheerleader, and so it's like her friends are just like, yeah, whatever, we're just gonna go off and do our own thing, we really don't give a shit about you here, because her abilities, look, she's strong, like, Bambietta's really powerful, she is, but her powers are not like, she's not like so brokenly powerful. She's not on the level of like the Royal Guard or Yuha or Hashwalth or anything like that. Her powers are pretty basic when it comes to the Stern Ritters. I would say there's Stern Ritter abilities that are way weaker than hers, but her stuff is like nothing to really write home about. She blows things up, okay? That's what she does, okay? She gets angry and she blows things up. That's Bambi's character. There you go. So Sajin Komamura arriving on the scene after discussing his whole backstory with his great-grandfather, his honored elder, the Falcor dog. So I love the new design of the mask. It's pretty neat. I always loved when Sajin wore the bucket. Like, the whole point of it is he took it off because he's more comfortable with being who he is. But I love the design of his first bucket hat that he wore back in the Soul Society, and I love this one, too. This is, like, more, like, actual armor. The other one was more, well, it was armor. He's went through a few of them. He wore, like, just, like, a piece of cloth over his head, and then he wore, like, something that was, like, iron-plated for a little while, and then he switched to the one we saw in the Soul Society when he was a captain, and now this one. So it's pretty neat. And so Bambi's there, and it's just like, yes, why are you wearing a bucket over your head, doggy? And then Komamura is just like, I am here to take Yuha's head, but you have defeated some of my own men, so I must defeat you now. You know, for Yuha, because he doesn't have a lot of time using this form that he's going to be, his abilities here that he got from his elder, from, well, we'll find out next episode what that's all about there. But he can't just, he can't just let the Strimers do what they want, especially during, in the 7th Squad barracks and taking out all of his men. So he's like, all right, I gotta deal with you first, and then I'm getting out of here. But luckily, at the same time, Shinji shows up, and he's like, hey, don't worry about it, Sajin. You go on ahead. You got more important stuff to worry about. I'm going to take care of Bambi here. Now, the way this goes, Bambi fights Shinji very briefly in the manga. He kind of gets a one-up on her using Sakenade, but then she just blows everything up using her Volt Standing. Okay, so she kind of knocks Shinji down, and then Komamura has to come back, and then their fight can really resume. It's probably still going to go that way because I feel Komamura has to use his Bankai against Bambi, has to utilize Kokujo Tengen Myo Dangaijo in this fight. Like, that's the whole point. So, yeah, I can kind of see that going down the same way, but maybe we'll get a couple more scenes with Shinji here. So Komamura gets out of there. He leaves, and he's like, oh, doggy, don't leave. I don't want to fight with this guy. He's weird. I don't like his hair, And so then Sakanade, he uses his Shikai, not his Bankai, just his Shikai. Up becomes down, left becomes right, front is back. It's all flipped up, upside down, turned around. Here we go. All right. And so, you know what? Every time Shinji has used this power up until now, actually the only real times he's used this power was against Aizen up until now. He used it against Aizen when we first revealed it, and then Aizen's like, oh, okay, you can flip some of your senses around like sight. I flip everything, so I'm better than you. And he's Aizen. Although Shinji was the first person to get a cutout on Aizen. He was the first person to make Aizen bleed, so I have to give the accolade to Shinji on that. But then he uses it again when all the Shinigami are trying to rush Aizen at once. And he's like, oh, crap, everything's reversed. But it still doesn't work because, once again, he's fucking Aizen. So what are you going to do, right? Nothing. That's what you're going to do. So using this power, though, against, like, not even, like, a weak opponent, because I wouldn't say Bambietta is weak. She's not the strongest Sternritter, but she's not the weakest. But using this ability on, like, a normal, like, person doesn't have God Hogyoku illusion powers, this would decimate them, okay? And once again, Bambi just uses her Volt Standing to just blow everything up at the end of the day. But, dude, also, I love the soundtrack playing in the background here. It's a brand new one. The best way I can describe it is, like, smooth jazz, because Shinji is a music-loving guy. He loves his jazz. And so there's this nice little, Bambi's just like, what? Hi, get over here, you stupid son of a, And so, yeah, the power's not really working. And the power is... So, yeah, Bambi can't really do much about this. And, Shinji's even like, hey, why don't you call your friends for help? And Bambi's like, I'm going to blow that smirk off your face before I get to that doggy. Also, it's really fun that Shinji is speaking backwards this entire time. It's like, I've practiced speaking backwards so you can hear what I'm saying. And we actually get that indicated when he first shows up in the manga. When he, like, joins Ichigo's class, he speaks backwards. Like, that's his whole thing. So Kubo was hinting at this for a while. All right, so we cut back very briefly to Shuhei fighting against Mask. This is actually a really cool moment, like what Shuhei does. So Shuhei has Mask de Masculine restrained here using his Kazeshini. So you look at this. You see Kazeshini wrapped around Mask's arm, and you think that, oh, okay, Mask is just going to yank the chain, drag Shuhei right into him, and then, like, boom, watch the clothesline kind of thing. I love this scene because it's like Shuhei is learning from his past mistakes, and so he expects Mask de Masculine to pull on the chain. So as soon as Mask pulls, Shuhei lets the slack go, and then the chain restrains him completely. And then, boom, Ikkaku just rushes up as he's completely restrained, and then, boom, Hozoki Maru right to the face. It does seem to do some damage to Mask. He hit him like square in the forehead. I just realized he has a Peter Griffin ball chin. But anyway, boom, hits him straight in the head. Quincy's, of course, have Blute, so they can guard against that kind of stuff. But still, the blood coming out, it looks like he dealt some serious damage. I think they're going to expand on this fight a little bit. I'm kind of excited here, right? Doesn't really matter at the end of the day because we cut to the last scene of the episode where we see Yuha and Uryu watching everything unfold from the Silburn, and all of the Quincy's begin to activate their Volt Standing, their release forms, okay? And boom, we see Bambi in her release form. She mentions that she couldn't use her release while they had the Bankai because it was getting in the way. They couldn't use both at the same time, which would have made them really broken if they could have done that. So that's her release, which is like pinkish red, which looks pretty good there. I don't want all the Volt Standings to be blue because that would get boring. Blue or white would get really boring if that's what they all were. So hers is like a pinkish color. I could see Basby's being like a really deep red-orange. That kind of works. Kind of want to see Asnote's being like just black. I kind of want to see Asnote's Volt Standing just, being like black Ryatsu just coming off of him. And so last scene, we see the lights fire up into the sky. We see 7 of them here. Okay, so one of them is Cang, one of them is BG9. We see those. They use their releases to avoid death. So Cang used his release to break out of the ice prison. So Cang, BG9, Bambietta is a third one. I think one of them is Candace, because it was later mentioned that Candace's wings kind of reflexively released when Bambi did. Like, it was just a reflex of them going into Volt Standing. It's just like it resonated with them as well. So a couple of them all released. Mask did not release yet. Asnot did not release yet. So there's a couple of other Quincy's that are releasing here. Okay. So that's the end of the episode. However, it's not the end of the episode because we get a shot with Ichigo still training in the Endless Path, or the Unreachable Path. So he's walking down this stone pathway toward the temple gate, the Torii Gate. He still can't reach it. He's like so close yet so far. It's so heavy walking down here. And Ichigo begins to see some really trippy shit here. So these are some shots that we saw in the trailer. I think Tokunada's part of this. Tokunada showing up in the Can't For Your Own World light novel. But also, we get a shot that's, well, 2 shots that are very interesting. Let me show you the first one here. Okay, this is the first shot. I wish I could show it to you in the animation, but I can't. So this is a shot of a being dismembered. You see a being here, 2 arms, 2 legs, and then the arms and legs and body parts just begin to fall off of them like they're being dismembered, like pulled apart, and like an action figure or something, like a doll. And so this figure is actually the Soul King. So Ichigo is seeing the Ryo's memories. Ichigo is witnessing the moment where the Ryo was dismembered by the original Shinigami. So I'm not super familiar with this lore because I haven't read all of the Can't For Your Own World novels. But from what I understand with this, and somebody will correct me, feel free to, please, because I'm not an expert on this particular part of the story. But the basic idea here is that the Ryo's existence is the keystone for maintaining the different realms. Hueco Mundo, Bankai, Living World, Soul Society. You need the Ryo for those realms to exist. There was a time before the Ryo existed and everything was just chaos. Everything was just melded together into one existence. That's kind of what Yuha wants to get back to. He wants to kill the Ryo to return everything to chaos, to the true state of the universe. The Ryo came into existence like 1,000,000 years ago and was like, okay, I'm going to be the conduit point, like the Nexus, to basically structure all these different realms together. And it's structured in the Buddhist cycle of samsara, like the cycle of reincarnation. So there's like 6 different realms. And the Ryo was just going to do that. Now, there was also, I think Ichibei was there because he was like the first Shinigami. So Ichibei was there and some other Shinigami, like the founders of the royal families were also there, okay? So the Ryo was like, I'm just going to do this myself. I'm going to regulate dimensions. But I think the original founders of the families, as well as like Ichibei and some other people, were like, they didn't trust the Ryo. Like they didn't trust him to, because he had like god power. He had like the ability to like snap his fingers and just do shit. All right, like he was like Zeno a little bit from like Dragon Ball. You know what I mean? Like he was a straight up god. Like not just Shinigami kind of god, like a god. He is a god, okay? He is like Eru Iluvatar up in this shit. All right, so they, I guess, were a little afraid of him, and they were like, okay, he might use his powers, and he might get corrupted, he might turn on us, he might not do what he says he's going to do. We're going to literally dismember him and separate all his body parts apart so he can't do anything, and he's just static, and we're going to freeze him into a crystal where we're going to force him into regulating dimensions. And the Soul King allowed this to happen. I think it was willing. I think he, like, I understand your will. Go ahead and tear me asunder. So they did that. They ripped off his legs, his arm. They gouged out his heart, for God's sake. Yeah, they just kept him in a stationary crystal. So he's there as more of an object, if anything, maintaining the flow of the dimensions, maintaining the dimensional stability, okay? And it's really dark because at the end of this arc, at the end of the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, if you want to know what happened to Yuha at the end of it, he was forced to become the next Reo. And it's not a situation where you have any awareness of yourself. You are just frozen in time and space, basically, as the nexus point of dimensions. That is what you're there to be, okay? So the really messed up thing is, the really jacked up thing is if Yuha was not around, if they didn't have Yuha's body, like, ready to go, they were actually thinking about using Ichigo for this. And let me focus on another point here. As we zoom into Ichigo's eyes, we see the Reo's eyes, because the Reo, as well as Yuha when he's in his almighty form, have multiple pupils like that, but I believe this is more indicating the Reo than Yuha. So this might, I'm split between what this is. If this is the Reo communicating with Ichigo, explaining the past to Ichigo, like, this is what happened to me, this is the origin of me, this is the origin of the universe as you know it, essentially, okay? Like, Ichigo's literally staring into the eyes of God at this point. Or this is Ichibei setting Ichigo up as like, okay, we're gonna turn you into the next Soul King if we have to. Like, this might be a thing where it's like, we're showing you this, not so you just know about it. We're showing you this because you might have to do this. You might have to be the replacement for the Reo, Ichigo. We're sorry. We don't want to do this, but we're gonna do it. Like, we don't want to do this, but we're not gonna have a lot of remorse in it either. You know, it's kind of like a choice between you, a single life of a human, or the continued existence of everything everywhere. You know, it's not really, like, do not say that Ichibei, like, this is a tough choice for Ichibei. No, it isn't. It isn't. It isn't. If Yuha wasn't available, Ichibei would have ripped Ichigo's arms and legs, gouged out his heart, threw him in the crystal, and called it a day. All right? Like, that's how that would have went down. All right? So thank God Yuha was around, because if not, Ichigo would have just been the new Reo. And he would have been the one frozen in crystal for 1,000,000 years until something else happened or something. Well, anyway, that's the end of the episode. This has been a very long episode of BAN-KAST. Next episode is Heart of the Wolf. You're hungry like the wolf. So yeah, pretty good. We're going to get Sajin Kamamura's fight next episode with Bambietta. We're going to see his new Bankai. We're going to see his new form. Looking forward to that. And I'm actually really interested in seeing where old Ichigo's training is going now that he's, like, seeing visions from God. So, yeah, this is going to be crazy. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know if I got anything wrong with that Caring for Your Own World explanation, because, like I said, not super, adept at that. But anyway, yeah, that was BAN-KAST. Thanks for watching. Sorry for the delay this week, and hopefully next episode will be out Sunday as normal. All right, thanks, everybody. Signing out.